Well, good afternoon. Part of the penalty you pay for using the free seats is you have to listen to me talk for a few minutes. So sorry about that. Hopefully, some of you are here to actually hear me speak, so that would be good too. Oh, good job. Even sitting up here in the white squares. My name's Dan Marvin. I'm the VP of Operations for Metropolitan Tile. Also, on the board of directors for the Tile Council of North America. So I try to do at least one talk every coverings about something that's sort of a technical topic that is new and kind of not well understood perhaps in the industry. So for this particular session, what I'm going to talk about is the new areas of use table. The areas of use table is where to use specific tile products. So you're going to start to see this coming at you. You're going to see it on marketing materials, you're going to see it on dealer boards, and I'm going to tell you how we got here and what the areas of use are in the actual table, and then you can ask me any questions you have about how it impacts you personally. So giving you a little bit of a background on where the industry has been as far as slip resistance. Slip resistance has had a few different attempts to sort of quantify it. And the main thing that we've hit upon over the years is called coefficient of friction. And a coefficient of friction is just how much resistance there is to something sliding across the tile. In a practical sense, that would be your shoe, but in the lab, we have to make it in a way that we can somehow measure it and quantify it. So we do that with a various variety of devices. The first device measured what we called static coefficient of friction. It was literally just a box full of some electronics, and we would pull it, and when it started to move, we figured that's the amount of resistance to friction there was. So that's what they call a static coefficient of friction. And if you've been around the industry for a while, you may remember that 0.6 number, that COF number of 0.6. That was the big driver from 1990 up till about 2012. And we basically just put it on the dealer board. We said it's ADA compliant, it's 0.6, you can use it in wet areas. And everybody was reasonably happy with that. But it really didn't get into kind of the shades of gray about where we should and shouldn't use particular tiles. The other downside about COF is it was very user dependent, so the person that ran the test could get whatever number they wanted. So you started to see that 0.6 number show up in tiles that really didn't deserve to have a 0.6, quite frankly. So about 2012, the tile industry passed a new standard, and that's the dynamic coefficient of friction. What dynamic coefficient of friction does, it's a little different box, it's a little more elaborate, and it actually drives along the tile, and it measures the resistance to movement over time. So each millisecond, it's actually measuring how much resistance is there to me driving over the surface of this tile. So the dynamic coefficient of friction is a moving measurement. And what we found is that a wet DCOF number of about 3.9 was more or less the same as that old 0.6 number. So where did we get the 0.42? So 0.42 is what the tile industry settled on as this is the number that we want to promote for tiles that are going to be used wet. And still, it was very binary. It was either it's a dry area, it's less than 0.42, or it's a wet area, it's greater than 0.42. There wasn't a whole lot more shades of gray in there. And for the most part, that worked. So what's happened in the meantime? Well, there have been a lot more slips and falls, there have been a lot more lawsuits, and there's been a lot more questions about, hey, should I really be putting this particular tile into this particular situation? So the tile industry kind of went back to work and tried to come up with a little more definition for everybody about where should we use particular tiles. So again, this just kind of highlights the fact that every year there's millions of slip and falls, there's thousands of deaths from slip and falls. So this really is a big monetary amount, and it's also a big toll on people. So the Consumer Product Safety Commission has kind of picked up on the fact that, hey, maybe floors shouldn't be slippery, and maybe we should be starting to tell people what we should put on that floor to make it not slippery. So they've been also in the background of driving this idea of, okay, industry, we're going to give you your chance before we start regulating this. You need to put together something that's a little more informational. So here's the table itself, and I encourage you to go on to the TCNA website. You can get the whole standard, and the whole standard has a lot more verbiage in it. I'm just giving you a kind of the Cliff Note version here because I've only got about 15 minutes to go through the whole thing. But if you want some more information, it's all there and it's free. So the TCNA is giving you out the A326.3 standard for measuring it. It tells you how it's measured, and then it gives you the table, and it gives you more information about what's in the table. So with that said, I'm going to go through each of these categories a little later on. But my laser pointer's not pointing, sorry. But you get a feel for the first two are basically what we talked about before. It's either dry and it's less than 0.42, or it's wet and it's greater than 0.42. But then we start to add in some more information. We start talking about interior wet plus, and I'll get into what that is in a minute, exterior wet, and then an oils and greases category. And at this point, they are what they're called manufacturer declared. So I'm a manufacturer. I actually make quarry tile. I have to know how to assign those numbers. The standard at this point doesn't necessarily say a specific number, but if you read through the standard, you'll see there's some suggestions. And it's things like you want a 0.5 if you're going to be in this interior wet plus area, and a 0.55 if you want to be exterior. So there's some numbers in there that start to give you a feel for, okay, 0.42 isn't enough. You actually need a little more COF if you're going to be in some of these more rigorous areas. So what does manufacturer declared mean? One thing I want to point out, that number, that coefficient friction number, the 0.42, or even before that, the 0.6, it's not the same as slip resistance. It's our best attempt at getting our hands around slip resistance, but there's a lot that goes into it. So there's my experience. I know we've been making quarry tile now for 100 years. I know it can go in front of fryers. I know that it can go in back of house applications. So I've got that experience. I've got a lot of installed applications where it's doing fine. So I know I can recommend it for those areas. There's other measurement systems out there. I've sent some of my products out to have them measured with some of these other systems. There's the German ramp. The German ramp is basically putting a person in standard boots on your tile and then elevating him at an angle until he starts to slide. So that's long and short of it. It's a pretty interesting test. It takes a little bit of effort, but those are some good numbers once you get them. There's also surface roughness. There's an effort right now to try to, on a microscopic level, define what surface roughness is and see if there's some actual university studies going on right now to try to quantify roughness. And then for us, we put abrasive grains, we make tread on our products. All of that's in an effort to give it additional non-slip properties. So going through each of these categories, and again, there's a lot more information in the standard, so I encourage you to read through it. Interior dry, this is going to be places where very common to you inside the shopping centers, not necessarily right at the front door, but any lobby areas, hotel lobby areas, home interiors without water sources, in other words, not the bathroom. Interior wet kind of expands that to entryways, public restrooms, not necessarily the shower areas, but just general restrooms, grocery stores, front of the house applications for restaurants. And now these new categories that we're adding, interior wet plus, this is things like public showers, and this is areas like interior pool decks and locker rooms and covered exterior areas and steam rooms, and even some of the front of the house when the whole restaurant is where you can actually see the kitchen when they're actually cooking right in front of you. So these are some of the shades of gray that we never had before. Exterior wet, this is all level. In the first session I did on this yesterday, I had the question, do you have ramps in there? Not yet. Keep in mind this is sort of a starting point, and I do expect that we'll have some recommendations for ramps going forward, but it's not yet in the standard. So these are all level areas at this point. So this is pool decks, walkways, patios, sidewalks, things that are outside. As you walk around the show floor today, you're going to see a lot of the new 2cm, the really thick tiles that are designed to be outside pavers, essentially. All of those should have a rating that's at least exterior wet. And then oils and greases. This is near and dear to my heart as a quarry tile supplier. These are more back of the house kind of applications, things where you do have a deep fryer, for instance, or even if you're working on cars and you have transmission fluid or oil on the floor. So this is my table. I apologize, it's a little small and hard to read. It's that's the real estate I had for my slide. But if you go on our website, the Metropolitan Ceramics website, you'll see this. So what we've done is we've listed all the areas of use for our products. And basically what you see is we've checked them all because our products, we know from experience, meet all 5 of those categories. And then our abrasive and our tread products, we've given them kind of their own, what I call the enhanced grip category. And enhanced grip is just another manufacturer declared category that says, hey, call me. If you got a ramp, if you got some pool that you're worried about, give us a call and we can steer you to the right product. And really, that's all of these manufacturer declared labels are asking you to do is kind of reach out to your manufacturer and say, hey, which product should I put here? To a degree, that takes the liability off of you because it's no longer you saying this tile can go there. It's us, the manufacturer, saying, yes, I'm telling you, you can put it in this situation. And again, it's for free on the TCNA website, so you can go and you can download the standard. Yesterday, part of the questions I got were from kind of a legal perspective is, if I put something in a specification that calls out one of these areas, am I now legally liable? Well, you always were. If you're putting a tile, calling out a particular tile, you were liable, but you didn't have that information you needed to make a good informed decision. Now with the new table, you're getting more information. So as long as the manufacturer is telling you, yes, you can use it in that application, then you can safely and comfortably say, I'm using the right tile for this particular specification. So that said, I'll open it up for any of your questions. What can I answer for you? So the question is, are all U.S. manufacturers doing this? Yes. I won't say that every single U.S. manufacturer has it on their website yet, but I've talked to a few. I talked to Florida Tile. I know Dell Tile's working on it. So yes, everybody is required. This is a standard. This is a specification. So they do have to do this to be A137.1 compliant because this is listed in the standard for tile. Good question. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. So will it be added to the International Building Code? Good question and an interesting question. Yes, the IBC is using this information now in the pools. They're updating their pool information and they are adding COF data to it. And in a bigger sense, TCNA has been working with the International Building Code Council to get this whole COF discussion into the code itself. The challenge there, obviously, is it's not just tile that's addressed by the code, so the other manufacturers of vinyl products and other hard surfaces are going to have to embrace this, and really they haven't. So that's a competitive advantage for you all. If you went to my morning discussion about places to look for advantages when you're selling ceramic tile versus vinyl, this is a good one. Vinyl doesn't make this designation, and most of the vinyl products don't meet that 0.42 requirement. Other questions? Yes, sir. The question is, does the standard require the use of the BOT 3000? The answer is no. Standards aren't allowed to have a proprietary device in the standard. The BOT 3000 is currently the de facto standard for most of the labs that are doing this testing, but really any device that can replicate that same COF measurement can be used for this test. I don't know of any other current devices that are on the market, but I'm also not, constantly talking to salespeople. Mm-hmm. So the question is, once the tile is installed, where does the liability go? And it's a good question, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to do it a lot of justice in the time we have allotted, but obviously if you've installed it, if you've specified it and said you can put it in this application and somebody slips and falls, the very first thing that's going to happen is some consultant's going to come out with about 3,000 and they're going to run to see if the COF meets what you said it should. Me as a manufacturer, if it comes back where I'm named in the lawsuit, I'm going to go through, make sure there's no waxes or any kind of slippery substance that was on my tile. I'm going to do the cleaning regimen and then compare it to my pieces that I have in-house that are my reference standards. So the question is, for quarry tile, because it's a 3% porosity instead of a 0.5% porosity, why would you use that in an oil and grease environment? And the answer for quarry tile is that it's vitreous, so that 3% level is still such a low amount of absorption that the oil isn't getting sucked into the surface. You're not getting that capillary effect that you would have at like a wall tile, for instance, that has 12 or 14% absorption. That literally sucks moisture out of the air. So the quarry tile, being a vitreous product, is actually, because that little bit of porosity is in there, it actually gives you a better surface texture for slip resistance. Any other questions? All right, well, I sure appreciate it. I'll stand up here for a few minutes if you want to come up and talk to me one-on-one about any of this, and I appreciate your attending.